So, to get started today, I just wanted to give a little prompt about the Lionsgate portal. Yes, we have moved through the main peak of it, but we're still in a lot of that Leo energy. We have the new moon in Leo coming up very, very soon on the 16th, just 2 days away. And everything that is aligned within the stars and the astrological bodies, they are asking us to embrace our authenticity and step into being the fullest iteration and most joyful version of ourselves, right? I have a kitty cat. I don't know if you can tell with the cattail, but he's distracting me a little bit. So we'll try to get him to calm down and lay down and stop headbutting mama. But anyway, it is hard to embrace our most authentic self when we've been taught time after time after time that this is not socially acceptable, right? And we have a little naggy voice that pops up inside of us. Some people call it our inner censor. Some people call it the ego. Some people call it our inner critic. And that's what I often call it the most, is the inner critic. Because it can be this little troll that like constantly hangs out and tells us that we're not good enough and that we aren't doing enough. And would we possibly think that we could do anything like that, right? So what you want to do when these at times exceptionally cruel voices come up inside of you when you're trying to get out of your comfort zone is to really try to push past it. And that, my dears, is one of the hardest things that we will ever do. The inner critic will try to tear you down at every turn on your path, on your illuminated path. And it will try to steal the joy from you as well, because that is one of the things that it plays out in. It thrives in anxiety and fear as we're trying to make change. I think I've probably mentioned this before. Since moving to Maryland, I've heard this euphemism or little tale multiple times about the crabs when they're in a bucket and then they notice that one of the crabs is starting to get a claw over and pull itself out of the bucket and set itself free. The others start pulling it down and pulling it back into the bucket, right? So not only can that apply to the people around us when we're elevating our vibration and people start becoming afraid of, they're putting boundaries in place, they're changing their lives, they're becoming more positive and stuff like that. Things in our life start popping up to hold us down, to keep us small. And within that, we have to learn to start changing the way that we feel within ourselves and moving past that. Because if we listen to the external forces and the internal forces, they're going to constantly tell us no, right? But if we just keep going and going and going, the voices lessen. We find more alignment with who we're around. We find support and stuff like that. But it can be very hard to do this. So what I'm going to try to outline today is sort of identifying the inner critic and some of the common negative self-talk that can come with that and what you can do for yourself, right? So first, identifying the inner critic. This can be the very relentless narrator of our life, right? It is often mistaken for a voice of reason, a voice of intuition. And we have to learn how to figure out the distinct tone of, is this self-sabotage or is this actually my intuition giving me a ping of warning, right? And a lot of times, I've mentioned this in the contraction and the expansion within our bodies before, um, because within the inner critic, you feel contraction, you feel fear, you feel shadows of doubt over the top of you, right? It's eroding at your self-esteem. Whereas with intuition, it can be like that nervous excitement, the excitement that you're ready to get started. Yes, there's a little bit of fear involved because maybe we've failed in the past and stuff like that. But there's always excitement built in. Whereas the inner critic often just tries to go for the jugular and beat us down. So some of the common self-talk that we might, or experiences we might have with the inner critic, could be perfectionism. You could start telling yourself, well, it's not flawless, why did I even bother, I shouldn't try that again, stuff like that, right? Also, comparison culture. OMG. Comparison culture is the worst, especially with social media. There is so much mental health problems that have been created by all of these fake lives that have been created for us to compare ourselves to. Like, if we aren't Instagram worthy, what are we doing with our life, right? And it's not, that's not what's important, right? We have to move past that. It's the present moment that we're living in and actually physically experiencing. That's the important thing that we will carry on with us our entire lives, not that Instagram worthy post and picture that we took, gosh, I don't know, could be 30 minutes to get the most perfect image, right? So those things. Also, within that, the comparison curse, there, whenever we start experiencing tinges of jealousy, I was just talking to the Artist Way group about this weekend, and when you start experiencing these tinges of jealousy, the best thing that I've found is to catch it and fill into why we are feeling jealous. And this could appear in, why are they getting all of the, especially if you're an artist, why are they getting into all of these big art shows? Why are they at all of these residencies? Why did they get this award? Stop a second. And this could apply to any business. This could apply to any career path. Ask yourself, did you put yourself out there first? That's the first reason why you might not have gotten the recognition, because you might not have applied for it, or you might not have put yourself out there. The other thing is, ask yourself, does this align with my path? Do I actually want this in my life? And if the question is no, then throw it over your shoulder with a grain of salt, right? And keep trucking. If it is a yes, and you do want to be part of that, if you do want to go to a residency, or you do want to go to be part of a big exhibition, that's your blueprint. That's your starting place to start getting the ball rolling, right? You know where you want to go, so start making directional steps toward that. So that's one way of like stopping it in its tracks. We often get that imposter syndrome as well, right? That will be found out. This comes with the faking it till you make it. I've been talking about this over and over and over again about how we can't stay in that fake it till we make it. It's a good place to start if we need to get the ball rolling, basically. Or, you know, we all begin at an intro level and then we start going, further and further. But a lot of times we stay in this imposter syndrome and we never accept that we've made progress or celebrate the wins that we've had, right? So we have to really be careful about not letting ourselves fall into that imposter syndrome and staying in the fake it till you make it instead of moving into self-belief of, yes, I've got this. Yes, I'm capable of doing this. That's where that starts popping in. Then, of course, there's fear of failure or fear of negative feedback. Especially in the artistic realm, if you've been in academia or you've done residencies and stuff, it's very common to have critiques. And this could be in any creative form, this could be in any career. We all have reviews, right? So a lot of times our inner critic will say, why even attempt this if you're just going to mess it up, or if you're not going to succeed, or something like that? Remember, failure is where we learn. We don't always have to completely fail, but as long as we sort of take it as like a hypotenuse type situation where, we have this idea and then we're testing, we don't have to have the perfect solution the first time. But as long as we're testing and thinking about Edison or Henry Ford or Isaac Newton or any of those, they didn't have the solutions the first time. How many times did Thomas Edison work on creating a light bulb, right? Or Alexander Graham Bell with the telegraph and the telephone and stuff like that. How many times did they test and fail before they got the right combination of things, right? So do it anyway. Then of course there's always self-worth struggles. This is a lot of that negative self-talk comes along with imposter syndrome as well. This can start forming at a very young age, and that is where our influencers, our peers, start creating this self-worth struggle within us at a very, very young age, right? And it may not have even been said in a way that was meant to be negative or something like that. It could have just been like, oh, trees are green instead of purple, if the kid wanted to paint it purple or something like that. And that's where we need to be very, very careful stifling young imaginations, so that we don't stunt their creativity and their authenticity at such young ages, right? There's another one of the inner critic that tries to get us stuck is the overthinking. Us staying in this constant wheel spinning. What if everything goes wrong? What if I embarrass myself? This constant overthinking, right? Overanalyzing an exercise, or because a lot of times if we just did the thing, it would not take near as long as us sitting there just spinning the wheels, right? And I'm a procrastinator. I get it. Sometimes our bodies just don't want to do the thing. Sometimes our brains just don't want to do the thing. It is Monday. I get it. Yes, absolutely. Procrastination is real. You wake up with the Monday blues and you're like, I have all the I don't want us, right? But within this is another one of those moments of catch and release. Am I actually procrastinating, or am I just processing and getting all the stuff together that then I can move on, right? And another thing that I often work with clients in this overthinking overdrive type situation is, are you stuck in your head? Are you logicking everything? Have you shifted it into your heart center and felt what you really want inside, at your deepest. Is this from a place of love? Are you doing what's best for you and your core group of people? That kind of thing. That can often snap you out of overthinking processes. That also leads us into catastrophic predictions. Um, we can be worriers and we can think of the worst possible outcomes that may never happen, right? So we have to be very, very careful, especially when we have past regrets. And that's another thing. Our inner critic always pops in and says, "Hey, you remember that one time when you didn't do so well at that piano recital, or that painting just really sucked, or why would you try to bake that cake again? Remember how awful it turned out that one time?" That's one part of the inner critic. It's always going to put this whole entire lineup of failures and it just make you totally regret everything that you're trying to do. So again, move out of that worrisome sort of, living in regret and try to think of the what if I do? What if I win? What if I uh, get past this and I don't have to worry about it? And usually, the best thing that I've found is take those past failures and make a list of what worked, what didn't work, and keep going. Also, just two more, there's a total of 10 that I've been mentioning, is mind reading. If you are a people pleaser, if you're recovering from trauma of any sort of kind, especially childhood, any kind of like experiences where you weren't necessarily in control, but you were adjusting your whole entire life to be the gauge of the emotions and to try to get ahead of all of the messed up stuff that was happening around you. That is mind reading. And if we're constantly thinking of making other people comfortable, or what if this person doesn't appreciate what I am talking about, or they feel triggered by this, or whatever, all of that's going to hold you back. If you worry about what everybody else is thinking, and remember, most of the time, people are so engrossed with themselves that they don't care what anybody else is doing. Just get on the road, especially around Washington, D.C., and you'll find out just how unimportant you are to most of the people in this world, right? So, if we're trying to constantly mind read, we're not living in alignment and we're not allowing people to show up for themselves. So it's best to just, instead of anticipating everybody else's needs, just worry about yourself and verbally ask them, do you need help? Would you like me to show you how to do this? Would you mind if I work in this area? Instead of anticipating that there's going to be a negative reaction, right? And of course, limiting beliefs. That's one of the biggest things that's holding us back, is a lot of outdated, limited beliefs that we're not smart enough, we're not creative enough, we're not talented enough. And also that we should be humble, that we should not put ourselves out there for the world to see and stuff like that. So as you start seeing like snippets of negative self-talk, one thing, especially that Julia Cameron recommends, is writing down these little blurbs and start trying to shift them into a more positive internal dialogue. And this comes with building self-compassion. Also, affirmations are really good, and I've mentioned this multiple times. if affirmations immediately start that contraction experience instead of an expansion, and you fill into all the spaces of that affirmation and you're like, yes, I'm glowing, I'm expansive, I love this, whole thing. Those, if you're not getting that, like, hell yeah, I've got this, then we need to start maybe a little bit smaller and find an I am statement that is true to you in this moment and work toward this bigger goal of I am awesome. I've got this. I'm the best person to do this job, sort of thing, because we have to internalize it always. So I was just talking about self-compassion, and it's so important to do this. When you're trying to silence the inner critic, because we will stumble, we will fail, and it's okay. And that inner critic will pop in and just, say, listen, I understand, but we're all, going to have mess ups sometimes and move on and learn from that, right? Don't they, I can't remember if it was Einstein or who, but they talk about how the sign of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again without changing. That's what you need to try to avoid. I also, for self-compassion, like to do breathing exercises and reground your body, taking and doing that shifting from the logic, the sensor, the negativity, and shifting it into love and compassion. And it's that, returning to heart center type thing, right? And we have to remember within that, our default in our brain is always going to be in the negative. It's been proven over and over and over again. There's tons of research on this. Our default state tends to be negative. And so it actually takes active work to stay in joy, stay in the present, positive mindset, right? And through that, practicing gratitude, practicing intentionality, and looking for the small little bits of magic in life, or taking the road less traveled, go a different way home, or, go for a walk down a street that you might not always go to, right? Because when we start stepping into our true selves, embracing our authenticity and pursuing our passions, the inner critic is always going to be a gatekeeper, restraining us from fully stepping into our own, right? There's little whispers of doubt, fear, judgment about our abilities, about our worthiness. And it's so important to find that truth inside of us, that alignment, to step into the liberation of it, right? So pursuing our passions, it then becomes a natural extension of embracing the authenticity. If we allow ourselves to imagine for just even a moment, like being able to do what genuinely lights us up, the activities, the interests, the pursuits, that creates the blueprint for our lives. And we just have to start plucking out what no longer serves us, what's not in our highest alignment, to then step into abundance and fulfillment, right? And remember, this takes a while. If you've been working in your career for 20 years and you want to do a overnight turnaround, you might be setting yourself up for a little bit of an issue, because things don't happen overnight. It's taken us 20 years to cover ourselves up in this mountain of doing things for everybody else and not fully living in alignment. And it takes bit by bit, just like it piled on bit by bit. It takes bit by bit action to realign our lives, right? So remembering that, we have to first step out of that shadow and look at the roadmap and then start making the changes. And it does take a while. Even if you are already living partially in alignment, it may take a little bit. It could take, 6 months, a year, even longer to fully find the freedom that you're searching for or seeking. But as we start moving into this alignment and our endeavors start becoming this powerful conduit for growth and empowerment and connection with others, we start experiencing the sheer joy of being unapologetically ourselves, embracing and expressing our uniqueness. And the more and more that we see this in action, the more we are fueled to continue being in alignment and stepping onto that illuminated path. So that wraps up today's Monday Musing. The cat is bumping the camera, so if you get a little seasickness, I'm sorry. And that's his favorite chair. But I would invite you to share some of the things that might have been popping up as you've listened to this, experiences that you've had, struggles that you've had, and let me know in the comments or via private message or something. But I truly thank you for joining me today. Let me know if you've watched the replay or whatever. The Artist Way group has closed for this round, but we will be popping in with another one sometime next in 2024, hopefully. But yeah, just keep shining, and I hope to see you soon sometime. I've got several events popping up in the mid-Maryland area, some metaphysical fairs and stuff like that. So if you haven't subscribed to my newsletter, that's a good place to stay up to date on all of that. And also just to get little bits of encouragement once a month. And yeah, remember to share with other people if you find this useful. And I will talk to you later. Have a great week.